Thanks everyone for coming today and listening. Today we're going to talk about trends that we're seeing within the cloud storage security world. So I'm Aaron Newman. I'm one of the co-founders of Cloud Storage Security Inc. And with me today as well, we have Tim, who you've heard already. And we have David Dreyer, who is the Director of Development, and he's going to be doing a little presentation as well. But we're going to kick off with me and go from there. What we're seeing today is really data is migrating into cloud storage. And what we're talking about today is really public cloud, IaaS. This has become the new norm. It used to be that the norm was building your own data center, storing your data there, storing it in places like NetApps, file drives, storage that your company owned. Today, public cloud has become the new norm. And the fact is, Amazon S3 is the largest data store ever, right? Includes incredible amounts of data. We've seen Amazon themselves actually acknowledge that they have exabytes of storage and literally trillions of objects. And this is likely out of date. So we're probably even beyond this because the growth is incredible. But, S3 storage has become critical. This is where more data is stored than anywhere else in the world. And we all know that once something becomes popular, becomes common, that's when it becomes, it grows, it gets the attention of attackers, it gets the attention of malicious users. So and it's not just S3, we also see, not quite as large, but we see Azure Blob Storage, we see Google Cloud has their object storage. So these object storage that exist in the cloud, in your IaaS platforms, is becoming the target of many different attack vectors. So we need to look closely at those and make sure that we're taking the right steps to secure it, making sure we're doing things properly to protect that data. And the fact is, securing it is both simple, but it's also complex, right? The controls around it are robust. They have a lot of capabilities to secure it in different ways. You can just shut it down. However, there's still complexity around it. No matter what you do, you're still going to have opportunities to make mistakes that lead to threats that can actually be successful against you. So you need to be diligent. So we know about kind of this Amazon, about the shared responsibility model, the shared security responsibility model, right? So Amazon themselves, they're the ones that are protecting the hardware, protecting what's underneath it, providing the strong encryption, protecting the encryption keys, things like that. Now, we as the customer still have a very important role there, right? We still need to protect the applications and the customer data. So we need to make sure that we're actually using the features and the functionality that Amazon Web Services is offering us. So, and that can be hard. And the biggest problem is really that you may use it in 99.9% of the places. You may use it properly, but all you need to do is make one mistake, and that's where the attacker has the advantage, because they really only need one hole to get into a system or an application. So it's really, again, very important to be diligent, not just at where your most secure, where your most sensitive data is, but other places that could end up leading to breaches within your S3. So there's a lot of complexity around that. So you have to protect that Amazon S3. There's a couple different things you could do. So when you upload that data, you have to set up access controls properly, right? They have a lot of features around how do you want to configure who can access what. You could set it up as public. You could set it up to block access from outside your organization. You could set up specific users or groups. So they have very, very robust and complete access controls around that. So you have to make sure that you're using those properly. You have to make sure you haven't inadvertently exposed an S3 bucket to the internet when it doesn't need to be public, perhaps doing that. And more important than just read public, which could be dangerous, but more important than that is write public, right? If you're allowing anonymous users to write, that could be very dangerous. You have to make sure your data is sitting in the right place, right? We have a lot of regulations around where data has to sit. Around the EU, they have regulations and compliance standards now that you have to monitor. All the different countries have those. So making sure your data is sitting in the right region for S3. And obviously, Amazon has a lot of different regions you can use to make sure you meet those standards, but you got to be sure you're doing it right. As well, making sure your backups are properly in place. Out of the box, Amazon's giving you backups, right? They provide a level of robustness around that data, and they have multiple levels, right? You can provide 99.9%, or you can provide five nines degree of protection, but you also need to provide protection against inadvertently backing stuff up by authorized users, or inadvertently deleting things and such. So make sure your backups are in place. Make sure your encryption's in place. Amazon, again, has encryption, transparent encryption built right into it. The access keys can be managed in multiple places, everything from hardware keys to software keys to keys you manage. As well, you could build your own encryption layer on top of that. So these are all the different things you need to do to protect your Amazon S3. Now, what we're going to talk about today is an additional layer of security beyond that, which is the fact is we're starting to see malware and viruses become found within your Amazon environment, within your S3 environment. So, we know viruses and malware are rampant and an everyday fact of doing business, right? We all have very robust controls around our local PCs around antivirus, or in our email. We have antivirus solutions. So, and these virus, malware, these could be everything from worms, right? The ransomware has been very popular in the last couple of years. Spyware, adware, Trojan horses, keyloggers, rootkits, bootkits, all these different types of attack software comes under this guise of malware. So we want to make sure that this type of malware does not end up in something in our S3 bucket, one of the objects. Historically, it was delivered through email, right? Through web, and even file shares. So that's where you needed it on your operating system, on your local PC operating system, in your email server. So that's traditionally how it's been delivered. However, this threat has evolved, and it now has this new attack vector where we're seeing infected files being uploaded to cloud storage, being uploaded to S3. And you can understand how, when it becomes that the largest data store, this is just practically speaking, things are going to become uploaded into it. And now you have to worry about, are you transmitting that to customers? Are you transmitting that within your organization? So a new threat vector that you need to consider and factor in when you're assessing the security of your cloud storage, and specifically your Amazon S3. So the threat has become common, right? We're seeing on a regular basis these type of attacks happening, where S3 buckets are actually ending up being breached. So we had one very recently here in August, just a couple weeks ago, where S3 buckets with buried secrets were discovered. We had, we have more stuff around vulnerabilities being S3 bucket vulnerabilities being used to create worms, to spread worms. We see, more of these API worms in the making. We see people injecting skimmer code into some of these files within these S3 buckets. We see Twilio was another one that's recently happened to, again, where code was added into an SDK. So these are all the type of things that can happen. Ransomware ending up in an S3 bucket. So these are the type of things that, because somebody perhaps didn't set the public permissions correctly, or somebody had access to an S3 bucket, left an organization, and it wasn't properly revoked. This opens up those S3 buckets to threats, to attacks that you need to worry about. So be aware of those now, and think through, I need to add antivirus, anti-malware into my mix of prevention, because these are becoming more and more common. So, and the risk is really bi-directional. We see it both upstream risk and downstream risk, right? You're accepting files, uploading files from unknown or untrusted users. Those could have viruses, malware embedded with them. And that could be anything from mortgage applications being uploaded to your website. They can end up with Excel macro viruses within them. Anytime somebody's sending you something, instead of through email traditionally where it'd go through a virus scanner, now it's getting uploaded through a web application, uploaded into S3, and consider one of your support people opens it up, or one of your employees opens it up because they're processing it. It gets passed on to somebody else. That virus starts spreading. So you need to think about, how am I going to place controls, protections, malware protections on data that's going into your S3. And then on the other side, if somebody ends up an attacker, and this is what we've seen happen very recently, was attackers that can gain access to an S3 bucket can then start injecting things in there, and then people that are listening to music, people that are on e-learning sites, people that are streaming files, software distribution, those things can end up injected with attack code, downloaded to all your customers, and open you up to liability, open you up to threats. So you need to be very aware of not just what's getting uploaded into S3, but what you have there that's getting downloaded to your customers. And we have a couple examples here, right? The first example is Twilio, right? We all know Twilio is kind of the API company. They develop a lot of software, and they have literally millions, if not tens of millions, of customers using their APIs to do all kinds of various software capabilities. So Twilio became, and we see here the register.com did an article about Java SDK code. Somebody injected some malicious code into it, right? So, and then people that were using those SDK downloaded it, injected into or incorporated into their software, and it became kind of a backdoor, or it could have become a backdoor into their software. So we see very sophisticated attacks. This is the stuff that's being detected. There's likely lots of this is not being detected, but the attackers are getting very smart, is that they're not just attacking Twilio. What they're really trying to do is attack the people that are using the Twilio software. So it becomes a much more leverage attack. So we see Twilio serving SDK software in S3 buckets, right? So they're just uploading their SDK, which is JavaScript, into an S3 bucket, pointing customers and saying, download the SDK by going to this link, this S3 bucket, download those SDK, and then use it within your software. So what that would mean is if malicious code was in that, then a third party, all the customers of Twilio, could end up with backdoors by those SDKs. So somebody misconfigured an S3 now read and write into the buckets, specifically the bucket that was that had the SDK. And now what they intended to do was make it read to the public, but inadvertently it appears that somehow there was write access as well. So the hackers figured this out. They went in, they put what you call skimmer code and replaced it into some of the JavaScript. So basically, much like a skimmer, you've heard of skimmers for instance, ATMs, where you put your card in and there's almost like a skimmer device that's sitting on top of the ATM, where it accepts your code and then passes it onto the machine, and then forwards the code that it kind of just intercepted, skimmed, to some hacker's database somewhere. So that's exactly what we're seeing. For instance, if they were wanting to skim these SDK and maybe perhaps forward over credentials or some kind of sensitive information to somewhere. So Twilio actually detected the incident and removed it very quickly, and then audited all their S3 buckets. And so again, and that's great to know that they audited their S3 buckets. The problem is we know IT is living and breathing. So even if you're secure today, that doesn't ensure you're going to be secure tomorrow. So you need to be aware and stay diligent about what we're doing with those S3 buckets, but also on top of that, being aware of, am I putting malware protection into my organization to make sure that even if something is misconfigured, I'm going to find the various malware that can end up in my environment. Another example, right? So Mage Cart. Mage Cart is an anonymous hacking group that goes around and again builds skimmers and tries to kind of inject them into various shopping carts and other places where skimming would be very profitable. So we saw the Mage Cart group. They found S3. They went out there and scanned globally for S3 buckets that were configured to allow writing to files. So, and they found a bunch of them. And of course, then they go and they find buckets. They search those for JavaScript files, targeting those, download those, inject or append your skimmer code again into there, and then rewrite the files into that S3 bucket that they take them from. So in other words, they're replacing it with something that looks exactly the same, but has some malicious code injected into it, some malware. So so the injected Java screen code gleans payment data from various payment pages and forwards it off to some anonymous website or endpoint or something like that. We saw Computer Weekly writing an article on how, if you don't set up your AWS security, S3 security properly, you can become a target of this type of attack. So, and again, you have to assume that you're going to make mistakes. So, beyond just trying to audit those S3 buckets, you need to think about, how do I put a policy in place? How do I put technology in place to be doing malware protection, even if somebody does get in to an environment? Example number 3. So we're seeing people start to talk about wormable buckets, right? So a worm is kind of a piece of code that starts in one place, spreads to another, and when those places it spreads to, it then becomes another host that wants to spread to other places. So S3 buckets can become wormable buckets. So again, if you're hosting sensitive information like access keys, if you have AWS access keys in a public S3 bucket, it can be accessed by hackers. Credentials are extracted. They then turn around and use those S3 buckets, grab the credentials from them, and upload malware into these buckets. So you kind of see the cycle there. So again, that was in the itproportal.com news. So just different examples of how, despite best practices and best efforts, people have been breached. And so we need to think about, how do we put in place malware protections, malware detection, so that we can know when bad things have been injected into your code, when anything from a rootkit to an Excel macro virus is perhaps makes it into your S3 buckets and then ends up in your environment. So available now, we Cloud Storage Security, our organization, we do offer antivirus for S3, which gives you that level of protection. We give you the ability to monitor your S3 buckets for malware. It will detect them, quarantine them. It uses multiple anti-malware detection engines, so it has the flexibility to not just use a built-in one that it comes with, but potentially integrate with your other malware detection engines. It automatically is discovering your S3 buckets, giving you the ability to point and click, and you're going to see some of this. It gives you it gives you a lot of different capabilities you need to manage this at an enterprise level. So the idea is, how do I make it transparent? How do I make it scalable? And how do I do this? Because if I'm an enterprise and I have thousands of S3 buckets with possibly hundreds of, millions, thousands or millions or even tens of millions of objects. How am I gonna do this in a accurate and diligent way to make sure that I'm looking for that? So make sure I'm protecting what I have. So here's, for an example, is what a dashboard looks like. And again, you're going to see a little bit of this in a couple minutes, but your dashboard for all your S3 bucket, we make it very easy for you to monitor what's being protected, how much data is flowing through, how many objects have been scanned, and what's being infected. So, and hopefully your number of infected files is low, but you need those notifications, which we have built in to be able to get alerted when something happens. You need actionable tasks that you could do out of there. So if you find something that is infected, how do I quarantine it, or how do I work it into one of my workflow systems? So there's a lot of capabilities to give you the flexibility to react how you want, and make sure that you're protected properly. So it's important for us as we're managing thousands of buckets across multiple regions, availability zones, and accounts, right, from a single console. So we do have that capability to not just do a single AWS account, but to do it to manage lots of buckets across many accounts, many AWS accounts. So you have that capability. There is a free trial on the AWS Marketplace. So you can go head out there. Really, it's going to run in your own environment. Very easy to set up and install. It should take literally minutes to get it up and running from the marketplace. It is designed to be very easy to get started with very little investment. So you can go ahead and give it a trial. You have that initial trial for 30 days. It's volume-based pricing. So if you're not scanning a lot of stuff, you're not going to get hit with a huge bill. And then as you scale up and add more files, more buckets, your organization grows, then the pricing will continue to be in line, and will grow with that. But we make it very easy to get in, as low as 25 cents per, the initial pass, the existing data is 25 cents a gigabyte. And so you could set it up to both look at new files as they flow in, but also to look at existing data that's already sitting there. So you might have a bucket with old data that's been accumulating for years, and you need to do a pass to check it for viruses at that point. We have custom pricing available as well for AWS private offers. So go just type antivirus and S3 into the AWS Marketplace, and you'll find it, and you can easily set that up. So we're gonna do a quick demo here from David, our Director of Development. So let's see if, David, are you there?
Yep, thanks, Aaron. Let me share my screen here. Okay, do you see my Google Chrome browser?
It does look good.
Great. So continuing on what Aaron was covering, what we've done is create an application that addresses the problem of malicious files in your cloud storage with a focus on ease of use. We want to make it as simple as possible to ensure that your files are free of malware. So our product's called Antivirus for Amazon S3. It's an all-in-one solution for monitoring and protecting your buckets. It enables you to quickly and easily ensure that all of your files are virus-free with minimal hassle and complication. The way this works is when you deploy the product into your AWS account, it stands up a console, which is what you're seeing here, that has all of the required permissions in order to protect your buckets from malware. It only takes, like Aaron was saying, a couple minutes to deploy the console and have your buckets protected with scanning agents up and running. So when you visit the console web application, this landing page you see is kind of a summary dashboard. It gives you an overall status view into your object protection with details such as the problem files and data scan statistics. Like up here, you see the total data scanned in the lifetime, total objects scanned, etc., and some charts just giving breakdowns of time frame based information. Now, this sort of information would be difficult to acquire if using a product that simply had virus scanning agents without this centralized console. And so we find the information to be very useful for quickly understanding the status and risk of your data that's being stored in your S3 buckets. So if we jump over to the bucket protection page here, we'll go ahead and see how this works. So we have a summary table showing all the buckets that are accessible by this console, including whether or not protection's turned on or off, as you see on the protection status side here. So scroll down and look at US East 1. You can see that we have all but 2 of them are turned on. So let's go ahead and turn on these 2 buckets. So I've set up one called CSS Webinar Existing Files, and there's already some files in there. So I'll go ahead and turn that on, and it's going to prompt us to see if we want to scan the existing files in there. And we'll say, yeah, go ahead and do that. And we'll say scan selected. We'll get a little message saying it's going to crawl the buckets, and it finished it. There's about 20 or so files in there, but it does crawl the buckets very quickly. And that will spin up an agent, particularly just for those files, and get those scanned. And then we have this new files bucket that I made that's just empty, and we'll go ahead and turn that one on, and we'll say don't scan. So when you turn on protection for a bucket, what happens in the background is that console is doing all the work required in order to make sure files put in that bucket can be scanned automatically. So that includes setup such as standing up scanning agents and adding events to the S3 bucket in order for new files to go into a message queue. And then our scanning agents work off that queue in order to process the files for malware, and they'll report back the status. So if we hop over to the S3 management console here, you'll see that I am looking at the new files bucket, and we'll go ahead and drop some stuff in here. Find that, hold on. Okay, so just drop a bunch of files in there, upload those. And so scanning for malware happens very quickly, and it's actually, shortly after this is done uploading, these will be done. And it looks like, yeah, I had one test virus file in there, and it's already gone. So what happens is the default settings to have infected files move to a quarantine bucket. You can also configure that to have them left here or have them deleted. And for every file that's scanned, we can look at the properties of the object. So pull up a picture here and go to the properties, and we can see that this gets tagged. And so on the tags, it says the scan result, which was clean, and the date scan, which was now. And so very quickly, it scanned all those files I just dropped in. And if we go back to the console, we can see here on the problem files page, if I switch over to the 1 hour view, there's that virus file I dropped in there. It's already been identified and reported in an easy to find location. And so it's easy to see what activity has been happening in your buckets that can put you at risk. So we know it found this file, and if we open that up, we can see that it's in this quarantine bucket. So if you ever needed to get that file back or wanted to look more into it, you can go look in that quarantine bucket and go see the file there. You can go clean out your quarantine bucket if you want to, etc. We'll hop back to the dashboard, give these charts a moment to refresh here, and jump back to the 1 hour view. And it's a little condensed because I wasn't scanning anything till now, but you can see that the files that we just did are already reported here. So there's those 10 files that I just dropped in, already reported. So it gives a near real-time view of the activity that's going on with your agents. Another thing that's really convenient with the single console deployment like this is you're able to link as many AWS accounts as you need. And as you see up here, I have 3, and then there's 1 inactive. So if you have 100 accounts in your AWS organization, you could link some or all of them and be able to use the single console deployment to protect all of those buckets from malware. So if we hop over to the linked accounts configuration page, you can see we get a summary of the accounts that I have linked, right? So we have our primary, which is the one the console's deployed in. It's called primary, but you can rename it to whatever you want. And then you get a bucket count in each of those accounts. And so we have primary, production, and testing are active, and we get a bucket count there. So I put 2 in production and 0 in testing. This development one says NA because it's inactive. So we actually haven't completed the linking process on that one yet. And so you're able to add as many accounts as you want there. And over in the bucket protection page, you can see here that it's called out by that nickname. So it's a convenient name to be able to identify it elsewhere in application and know exactly where that lives. And so on top of what we've seen here so far, we're currently in the process of adding other major new features such as sophisticated groups and access management. So that will allow you to limit who can see which accounts and which buckets when they log into the console, among other things. And that's all for the demo. Thanks for your time.
Great, great demo, David. Thank you for that. Yep. So thanks everyone for coming. Well, I think we have a couple of questions anyways, but if you have questions afterwards, just reach out to info@cloudstoragesec.com or go check out our website, cloudstoragesec.com as well. And you'll always get us offline. So, and I'll tell you, go try out the demo. Free trial, nothing to lose. So would love to hear your feedback. Tim, do you got any questions pre-sent in?
Yeah. The first one is around free trial. You just covered that. I think the one thing they need to know, it's a 30-day period or 500 gigabytes. So there are some parameters around it, but free trial is there. Second one, which browsers are supported, Aaron?
Good question. David, what browsers are supported?
Yeah, so any modern browser, Chrome, Firefox, Safari, Microsoft Edge, any of those should work perfectly fine.
Awesome. I think we covered this. How do you charge for the product? And it isn't a true consumption-based model, as Aaron pointed out, and it's charged for each gigabyte as you scan with the product. Do I need to make any changes to my application to use this?
You should not have to make any changes to your application. This is using the mechanisms within S3 that when new files are put out there, they raise messages that we process. So should not have to make any changes at all. And even when we go back, we can go through and scan existing files that already exist from before we were installed. And so again, nothing needs to be changed from the application perspective. You know, you need to run some servers in your environment, some instances in your environment. But other than that, it doesn't require, it should be very transparent to what's going on in your current infrastructure.
Okay, next one. Can I scan S3 objects from more than one account within the same deployment?
David, you want to answer that one?
Yes, you can. As we saw in the demo I just did, we had multiple accounts linked, and it will show all of the buckets in each of those accounts that you link to it, and it will scan any files in those buckets on agents running in that primary account.
All right, thank you. Couple more. How do I tell if the files are being scanned?
David, I'll let you answer.
Yep. So there's three big ways. So on the dashboard with those charts, you can see the current status of them. And on the problems file page, you can see the list of, for example, infected files that were caught. And then in the S3 console, if you look at the tags on the object, every file is tagged. So you can see it was scanned that way.
All right. How do I tell if the file is clean?
So you'll know if the file is clean by the object tag will say clean, and then also it would not be on the problem files page.
Okay, that one was already answered. And then, oh, can we get access to the CFT, to the CloudFormation template?
Yes, so on our help documentation, which is help.cloudstoragesec.com, in the frequently asked questions page, there's a how to subscribe section that has a link for the CloudFormation template.
Okay, and that's all I have for submitted questions. With that, if there's nothing else, if you can submit it through the Q&A, or if not, we're going to sign off. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, David. Thank you, Aaron. Great job. And this recording will be available to everybody that participated or could not make it, and you'll see it out there shortly.